She was my best friend's wife. And 18 months after we buried him, I married her. Before you say anything, just hear me out, because this story goes places I never could have predicted, and by the end of it, I think you'll understand exactly why I did what I did and why I'd do it all over again. My name is Daniel. Marcus and I had been best friends since we were 9 years old. We grew up on the same street, went to the same schools, played on the same teams, fought over the same video games, and eventually watched each other become adults. He was the kind of guy who walked into a room and made it feel warmer, not louder, just warmer. When he met Priya in our late 20s, I watched him transform from my ridiculous, chaotic best friend into someone who genuinely had his life together. And when their daughter Zara was born, I became the unofficial uncle who showed up too often and stayed too late. Then Marcus got sick. I won't walk through all of that because, frankly, some grief is not meant for public consumption. What I'll say is that it was fast, it was brutal, and it left a hole in the world that had no business being there. He was 34 years old. Zara was 3. In the months after his death, I watched Priya navigate something I can barely describe. She was grieving her husband while also trying to be fully present for a toddler who kept asking where Daddy was. She was handling an estate that Marcus, bless him, had not fully organized. She was working part-time because Zara's daycare schedule made full-time work nearly impossible. And then the immigration issue surfaced, which changed everything. Priya had come to the country on a spouse visa tied to Marcus. Without him, her status was precarious. Her attorney gave her a realistic but terrifying picture of what her options were. She could apply for a humanitarian adjustment, which was uncertain and slow. She could return to her home country with Zara and attempt to reapply from there, which would be disruptive and potentially lengthy. Or there was a third path that her attorney mentioned almost as an aside, and that was remarriage to a citizen. I want to be crystal clear about something. Nobody asked me to do anything. Priya did not come to me asking for marriage. That conversation never happened. What happened was that I was sitting with my own grief and my own sense of helplessness, and I started doing research. I started understanding what Priya was actually facing, and I kept thinking about what Marcus would have done if the situation were reversed. That answer was not complicated for me. Marcus would have walked through fire for my family. I brought the idea to Priya myself. I laid it out practically. I told her I understood if she thought it was insane. I told her we would set clear expectations and clear boundaries. I told her it would be a legal arrangement to protect her status and keep Zara stable in the country. She was born in. Priya looked at me for a long time and then said, "You are either the best person I have ever met or the most naive, and possibly both." She said yes. The wedding was small, immediate family only. Her parents were grateful and confused. My mother cried, which honestly could have meant anything with her. We signed paperwork. We took a few photos for documentation purposes, and then we went back to our separate lives, except that we were legally married, and I was listed as Zara's stepfather on her updated school emergency forms. Here is where the story gets complicated, and I mean that in ways I genuinely did not anticipate. About 4 months into this arrangement, something started shifting. Not dramatically, not like a movie. It was small things. Priya and I had always been friendly, but we had never really been close independently of Marcus. He had always been the bridge between us. Now we were having our own conversations. Late ones, after Zara was asleep. We were talking about Marcus, yes, but also about everything else. About our childhoods, and our fears, and our bad habits, and our embarrassing opinions about things that do not matter. I started noticing that I looked forward to those conversations in a way that made me uncomfortable. I felt like I was betraying something, though I could not have told you exactly what. I had a lot of late-night arguments with myself about what was appropriate and what was just loneliness dressed up as something more meaningful. And then Zara started calling me Dad. Not because anyone told her to. Not because Priya encouraged. it. She just started doing it one morning over breakfast, completely casually, like it was obvious. I excused myself to the bathroom and stood at the sink for about 3 minutes processing that moment. That little girl, who had Marcus's exact same laugh, had just handed me something I had not asked for and did not know how to hold. I talked to Priya about it that evening. We were both careful with each other. We were both aware that we were in unusual territory. But Priya said something that I have thought about almost every day since. She said Marcus used to say that the people who show up consistently are the ones who earn the title. And she said Zara was not confused. She knew what she felt. That conversation lasted until 2 in the morning. A lot was said. A lot was acknowledged. We were both honest about the fact that something had changed between us and that neither of us had gone looking for it. We also talked about Marcus with complete openness, about the guilt I felt, about the grief she still carried, about the fact that loving each other, if that's what this was, did not diminish what had existed before it. We did not rush anything. I want to make that very clear. We spent months in that honest, careful, slightly terrifying space where you know something is real, but you are both too respectful of the circumstances to just dive in. Eventually, we went to therapy together. Not couples therapy initially, just grief counseling that expanded into something broader. Our therapist was extraordinary. She helped us understand that love is not a finite resource, that honoring someone who is gone does not require refusing to live, that Zara, having 2 parents who were present and stable, was not a betrayal of Marcus, but potentially a fulfillment of what he would have wanted most. Now, I want to tell you about the part that was actually crazy, because everything I've described so far is emotional and complicated, but it's not the thing that made my jaw drop. About a year into our marriage, a letter arrived. It was from a law firm. Marcus, it turned out, had set up a small trust before he died that none of us had known about. His parents hadn't known. Priya hadn't known. His attorney at the time had not communicated it effectively, and it had sat dormant in paperwork until an audit triggered a notification. The trust had specific language in it. It referenced Zara's care, her education, and her stability. And there was a clause, written in Marcus's own words because he had apparently drafted part of it himself, that expressed his hope that the people who loved Zara would find ways to love each other too. I read that line about 4 times. I called Priya into the room. I watched her read it. Neither of us said anything for a while. I don't know how to interpret that with certainty. I genuinely don't. Maybe it was a general sentiment about community and chosen family. Maybe Marcus, who knew me better than almost anyone alive, had written something that was exactly as specific as it sounds. I will never know for sure. But I will tell you that reading it felt like something I can't fully describe, like a door opening that I hadn't realized I'd been waiting on. Priya and I have been together, genuinely together, for about 2 years now. We are still married, obviously, but it means something different than it did at the beginning. Zara is 5.5 and opinionated and brilliant, and she has her father's laugh and her mother's stubbornness, and she is, without question, the greatest gift Marcus left in this world. I think about him every day. I talk to him sometimes, in the quiet moments, the way you do when someone is gone but not really gone. I think he would have something to say about all of this, probably something funny, almost certainly something that would make me feel both called out and completely understood at the same time. I didn't set out to fall in love with my best friend's widow. I set out to make sure his daughter would be okay. But life has this way of taking your best intentions and turning them into something larger than you planned for. And sometimes, when everything feels impossible to understand, love is the only thing that actually makes sense.